Hi, I'm Joyce Ashby from the North Carolina Durham VA GeroFit program. I'm here with Toby. I've served in the North Carolina National Guard for 24 years. I joined GeroFit 1 year ago, and I joined because I had issues relating to my mobility, the tingling in my hands, feet, etc. And I needed consistency in terms of being active with some kind of exercise program. The GeroFit program has worked tremendously. I enjoy the class. It's helped me with my coordination. And most of all, I hope you enjoy the class today.
Nearly all older adults can safely meet the national recommendations of engaging in low to moderate intensity physical activity. Do not exercise if you have any symptoms that have not been evaluated by your healthcare provider, such as pain in your chest, abdomen, or joints, unusual swelling, difficulty catching your breath, dizziness, or fluttering in your chest. If you experience any of these symptoms, stop and reevaluate before continuing. If you have further questions, discuss your exercise plan with your healthcare provider.
Thanks, Joyce. Hey, GeroFitters. My name's Toby. I'm an exercise physiologist here with the GeroFit program, and today we're going to be doing a core strength and low back pain prevention workout. So this workout could be done seated in a chair, or you could do this workout down on the floor, so whatever your preference might be. And since we're dealing with our backs can be kind of tricky, so if any of these exercises are uncomfortable for you, you can either limit the range of motion to a comfortable range for you, or skip that exercise entirely. So we're gonna get started with a warm-up, but before we do that, I also wanna mention that you can find our other videos on YouTube. Just search for #GeroFitExercise. So we're gonna go ahead and start with our warm-up because we wanna get our body moving, get that blood flowing a little bit, and then we'll get into the rest of the workout. So we're gonna start with just a little bit of marching. So just marching in place, swinging those arms a little bit. If you're doing this from that seated position, just doing some seated marching, bringing those knees up, swinging those arms. All right, so then we're gonna get into some toe tapping. So we're gonna be tapping our toe out and to the side, alternating legs. So just tapping to the side, tapping to the side. Tap, tap. Same thing if you're seated. You just might have to scoot up towards the front of the chair a little bit more. Give those legs a little bit more room. Then we're gonna add some arm movement to this. So we're gonna start with just a chop to the side. So just straightening that arm out to the side. So same side you're tapping with, you're just chopping that arm to the side. Tap and chop, tap and chop. All right, so we're gonna keep tapping, and now we're gonna do a reach up and across. If you have any shoulder issues, you have trouble bringing those arms up overhead a little bit, you can just be moving those arms more in front of you. So as we tap that same side, we're kind of reaching up and across. And again, keeping those arms a little lower if you have any issues bringing those arms up past a certain point. And then finally, we're gonna keep on tapping, and we're gonna finish off with our row. So for this, we're gonna have our arm stretched out in front of us as far as we can, and then as we're tapping, so we tap, pull back, and squeeze. So pulling those elbows back, squeezing those shoulder blades together, so we tap and squeeze. Tap and squeeze, tap and squeeze. So loosen up that upper body a little bit. More here. Okay, so now that we're warmed up, we can go ahead and get in position for the rest of the workout. So if you're gonna do this workout down on the floor, go ahead and get yourself set up for that. We'll see you back here in just a sec. So we're gonna start our workout with a strengthening exercise for our core, but it's also the position we kind of want to get into for a lot of these exercises. So if you're on your back on the floor, we're going to work on a pelvic tilt. If you're in that seated position, we're going to just work on some abdominal bracing, so contracting those abdominal muscles. Position, our low back has a little bit of arch in it, so it kind of arches up naturally. So a pelvic tilt is just flattening that arch and stabilizing that low back area. So to do that, all we're gonna do is draw on our belly button, and then we're gonna roll our hips towards our upper body. So when we draw that belly button in, we're gonna roll those hips, and that flattens that low arch, and it also contracts those abdominal muscles. So again, it stabilizes that low back. A way to do this, if you want to know that you're doing it correctly, is you can put your hand underneath your low back. You can feel that arch kind of curves up. And when we do that pelvic tilt, we want to compress our back up against our hand. So when we draw that belly button in, we're rolling those hips, that low back, that arch compresses or flattens, and that hand gets compressed. So that's a good way you can know if you're doing this correctly. If you're in that seated position, you're just gonna do some abdominal bracing. So again, that's just kind of drawing that belly button in and contracting those abdominals and holding that position. So again, this is a good strengthening exercise, but it's also a good position we want to get into that, again, stabilizes that low back for a lot of these other exercises that we're going to do. So we'll practice that a few more times. So again, we're going to draw that belly button in, roll those hips towards your upper body, and that flattens that arch. And again, you're contracting those abdominal muscles. And again, if you're seated, you're just drawing that belly button in and then contracting those abdominal muscles. Again, we're just tightening that low back area, just contracting those abdominal muscles. Again, we're just holding it for a few seconds here. When we do some of these other exercises, I'll kind of let you know when to get into that position, and we want to kind of hold that during that particular exercise. Okay, so the first exercise we're going to do is just some knee rotations. So this is going to be a mobility exercise for our low back. So we're just kind of, again, working on that mobility throughout this workout, both from our head all the way down to our tailbone. And then it's also a core strengthening workout where we're working on our abdominal strength, our glute strength. So that's kind of what this workout's covering. So the first one, again, knee rotations if you're laying down on the ground. So feet are together, knees are together, and we're just rotating side to side. So we're just dropping those knees to one side and then bringing them back the opposite way. We're pausing briefly on either end. And again, we're just working on that mobility, that rotational aspect of our low back. Just nice and gentle. If you're in that seated position, you're just gonna do some torso twists. So you wanna be seated nice and tall, torso's nice and upright, shoulders are back, and you're just rotating side to side, and working on that rotational aspect of our spine, that mobility. In this one, you might find that going to one side might be uncomfortable, but going to the opposite way is perfectly fine for you. If that's the case, just stick to that one side. And then you might find that after doing a few, you kind of loosen things up a bit and you can actually go back to the other way. But but nice and gentle. Kind of the theme of this workout is nothing should be uncomfortable. It's just a very easy, gentle workout, working again on that mobility. Okay, so then next we're gonna work on a core strengthening exercise. So this is gonna work on our backside. So we're working on that glute strength. So we're gonna do some bridges. So if you're laying down, you're gonna do bridges. If you're in that seated position, you're gonna do some glute squeezes. So again, contracting those glute muscles. So from the laying down position, your knees are bent, your feet are flat on the floor. Feet are about shoulder width apart or so. And then we're gonna get into that pelvic tilt position. So you're gonna draw that belly button in and roll those hips towards your upper body. So again, that's flattening that arch and tightening that low back area. And then we're gonna really focus on squeezing our glutes to lift up that torso. Pause briefly at the top, and then nice and easy on the way down. So we're fighting against gravity on the way down, so we don't wanna just let our torso drop. So again, getting in that pelvic tilt position, so draw that belly button in, roll that pelvis towards your upper body, and then squeeze those glutes, and then coming back down. And again, if you're in that seated position, you're just gonna work on squeezing those glute muscles. So it's kind of helpful to have your hands underneath your body there, and then really focus on contracting those glutes, squeeze them, and then relax. From that floor position, how high to go up. So it's really just gonna be what you're comfortable with. I wouldn't shoot for anything above bringing that upper torso and your thighs in line. So anything below that is kind of what you'd shoot for. So, but it's gonna be a comfort level. So how strong you are right now, but really focusing on squeezing those glutes to do the lifting. Again, getting into that pelvic tilt position before we start. So often it's helpful to just reset after each one, get into that pelvic tilt, and squeeze those glutes to do the lifting. All right. So next we're gonna do another core strengthening exercise. This time we're gonna work on our abdominal strength. So for this one, if you're laying down, we're gonna do some supine marching. And then if you're seated in a chair, we're gonna do some marching as well. So from the laying down position, we're still in that position that we got into for the bridge. So our feet are about shoulder width apart, feet are flat on the floor, knees are bent. We do wanna get into that pelvic tilt position again. So we're gonna draw that belly button in, roll those hips towards your upper body to flatten that arch in your low back. So really focusing on keeping that belly button drawn in. And then supine marching. So supine, all it means is you're just laying on your back. So that's what we're doing now. So we're supine. And then we're just gonna do some marching. So think about how you would march. You'd lift up one leg and then slowly come back down. And then we do the opposite leg. So bringing that leg up and then slowly back down. So the goal of this is we want to maintain that pelvic tilt. So we want to keep that belly button drawn in, and we want to prevent as much as we can any movement in our low back or our pelvis. So if you notice any sort of shifting of your pelvis going side to side, or some movement in your low back, that arch is trying to get back into that normal position out of that pelvic tilt. If that's the case, you might not be strong enough to bring those knees up all the way. So then you just keep those knees a little bit lower. So just don't raise those legs up as high. And then as you get stronger, you can bring those knees a little bit higher and a little bit higher. From the seated position, you're still gonna do that same sort of marching movement, except you want your torso nice and tall. So torso's upright, shoulders are back, and you still want to draw that belly button in. So again, that abdominal bracing. So draw that belly button in, and then you're just going to do the same marching. So you're bringing one knee up Slowly on the way back down, opposite leg, back down. So essentially the same movement, just in a vertical position in that chair versus laying down on your back here. But again, maintain that pelvic tilt or that abdominal brace because you want to mimic or limit and minimize as much as you can that movement in your low back or your pelvis. Okay, so the next exercise we're gonna do is a stretch for kind of our glutes and our low back. So we're gonna do a one leg to our chest stretch. So for this one leg is straight out below you, and the other leg's bent, and we're gonna pull that bent leg towards our upper body, so towards our torso. So you can use your hands, and you can grip from the outside, so the front of your leg, just below your knee. You don't want to grab from your knee, but just below, and just kind of pulling that leg closer. If this causes any discomfort, maybe it causes a little bit of knee discomfort, you can always grip from the underside as well. So gripping from the underside of your thigh there, and then pulling yourself closer. And with our stretches, we want to hold for about 30 seconds or so. And if while you're doing this straight leg wants to kind of lift up, that just means your hip flexors are a little tight. So you can just bend that leg a little bit and then continue to pull that bent knee towards your upper body. From that seated position, we're kind of doing the same thing. So your back is up against the back of the chair and you're just pulling one knee closer towards your torso. So again, it's kind of the same movement, just a seated version versus laying down on our back here. And we can go ahead and switch legs. So we're bringing that opposite leg towards our upper body, and that other leg that we just stretched is straight out below us, or again, could be a little bent. Again, we're holding this stretch for about 30 seconds. So we're just looking for a nice, gentle stretch, nothing uncomfortable. So same goes for any of these other exercises. So we want things to be comfortable, nothing that's painful. If any of these exercises are painful or cause some discomfort, skip that particular exercise. All right, next, if you're laying down on the ground, we're gonna do double knees to chest. So again, this is gonna stretch out that low back a little bit to help take some pressure off of that, but same as the single knee, except you're bringing both knees towards your upper body. If you're in that seated position, you're just gonna continue to alternate one knee at a time. So you'll go back to the first knee or first leg, do that stretch again, and then we'll switch halfway through. And if you're on your back, and this is a tough position to get into, you can continue with the single knee to chest, just alternate again halfway through. All right, so you can go ahead and switch if you're doing one leg at a time. All right, so then we're gonna go ahead and move on to our side now. So if we're on our back, we're gonna move on to our side. So it doesn't matter which side you start with, we'll do both. And your legs are gonna be straight out below you, so one leg's just right on top of the other. Then if you're in that seated position, we're gonna be doing some resisted side steps. So this is where having a resistance band would be helpful, but you can certainly do the movement without a resistance band. So for this one, lying down, legs are straight out below you, toes are pointed forward,
One leg's on top of the other, and we're just gonna be lifting up this top leg. So we're just lifting up this top leg. Again, keeping those toes pointed forward, and then slowly coming back down. Don't forget to breathe too. So these next couple exercises, we're working on our hip stabilizers. So working on those muscles right on the side of our hip. So when you do this exercise and the next one, if you feel that bony protrusion right on the side of your hip there, those muscles right on the side, that's what you should feel working. You're just lifting up to whatever's a comfortable height for you. Again, keeping those toes pointed forward. Then if you're in that seated position, you're just gonna be with those bent knees, feet flat on the floor. You're just kicking one leg out to the side, so it's almost like you're taking a side step. If you're using that resistance band, that's just gonna provide some resistance to doing that movement. Whereas we have the weight of our leg and gravity when we're laying down. When we're in that seated position, we need to add that resistance. So that's where that resistance band comes into play. So it's coming around the outside of your thigh, and your feet are right on top of it. And as you step out, that resistance band provides that additional resistance. All right, so the next exercise is gonna be a clamshell. So again, this is another hip strengthening exercise that working those glute muscles right on the side of your hip there. So for this one, from this position laying down, you're gonna bend those knees behind you. So again, we're looking for about a 90-degree angle in our knees, and then we're gonna bring those knees up. So we're bending so we have about a 90 and almost a 90, somewhere in that range. So for this exercise, we're gonna keep our feet together, and our hips and our feet are gonna be the hinges, and we're lifting up this top knee. So again, keeping those feet together, and we're just lifting up that top knee. And then slowly coming back down, so fighting against gravity on the way back down. And if you're in that seated position, you're just gonna switch to the other side now. Do that, that resisted side step from that seated position, just on the other leg. Again, we're working those muscles right on the side of our hip there. So if you have trouble with this one, maybe you're not feeling it, just put your hand right on the side of your hip and really focusing on contracting those muscles to bring that leg up. Okay, so then we're gonna go ahead and roll over onto our other side if you're on the floor, and we're gonna do this same exercise just on the opposite leg. So start off with our legs straight below us, and we'll do that side leg raise. So legs are straight below us, toes are pointed forward again, and we're just lifting up that top leg, and then slowly coming back down. From that seated position, you're just gonna go back to that opposite leg, do our second round of those resisted side steps. Again, fighting against gravity if you're on the ground when you're bringing that leg back down, so we don't wanna just let that leg drop. So we wanna fight against gravity, slowly come down and back up. Couple more here. So again, keeping those toes pointed forward, lifting up to whatever's a comfortable height for you. Okay, and then we're gonna go back to that clamshell exercise. So again, we're gonna bend those knees back behind us. So looking
for about a 90-degree angle at our knee, and then bringing those knees up so we're flexing those hips. So we're looking for about a 90 and a 90. So again, keeping those feet together, hinging from the hips and our toes, our feet. We're lifting up that top knee and then slowly coming back down. So again, working those muscles right on the side of our hip. So if you have trouble with this one, put your hand on the side of your hip there and really focus on squeezing those muscles to do that lifting. If you're in that seated position, go ahead and you can switch to that other leg now. So we're just doing 2 rounds for each leg from that seated position, that resisted side step. So again, that resisted side step, you're pushing out with the side of your foot. So kicking that leg out to the side, then you're resisting the pull on the way back in. So kicking out to the side, and then resisting that pull. And just a couple more here. Again, nice and easy. All right, so then if you're on the ground, we're gonna go ahead and roll over onto our stomach now. And then from that seated, lift our torso up. So from the seated position, you're facing down, forearms are kind of right at your side, and your hands are roughly at the level of your head. And all you're gonna be doing is you're pressing those forearms and those hands into the ground. I like to think of it as pressing down and then forward slightly, and then you're lifting up your chest and torso up off the ground, getting that extended position in our back, so that arched back. Pausing for a couple seconds and slowly coming back down. So we'll do this for repetition. So again, pressing that forearm, those hands into the ground, and then arching that back. Similar movement from that seated position. So I like to have my hands kind of around the back of my head. And then if you have a comfortable chair back, you can use that as kind of a guide to arch your back over. So we're just, again, seated nice and tall, and we're just arching that back the opposite way of what we're used to. So getting in that extended position, pausing briefly, and then coming back to that neutral position. So when you do this, you might feel a stretch in your abdominal muscles as well. So we are getting those into a stretched position. So that's normal if you feel that. But again, just nice and gentle. Like I said, if anything is uncomfortable, skip this particular exercise. It's suitable for most, but not everybody. So if you have a particular condition that makes this one not a good one for you, like I said, just skip it. But again, if you're on the floor, keeping that lower half of your body flat on the ground as much as you're able. Just lifting up that upper torso, getting that arch in your back. And last one. All right. So then from the floor, you're gonna go ahead and get onto all fours. So our knees are gonna be right underneath our hips, and our hands are gonna be right underneath our shoulders. So onto all fours. Give everybody a quick second to get there. And then in that seated position, you just wanna be seated with your feet flat on the floor, feet are about shoulder width apart, seated nice and tall so that torso is nice and upright, good posture. And the first one we're gonna do is a cat-dog stretch. So I like to call it a cat-dog stretch. I feel like each position looks like a cat and a dog. You can also hear this called like a cat-camel stretch, but basically we're gonna take our spine through both flexion and extension all the way from our head down to our tailbone. So it's a good mobility exercise, and it's pretty gentle on everything. So it's just 2 positions that we're rotating through. So the first one is going to be the cat position. So think about like a startled cat that has an arched back. That's kind of what we're looking for. So for this one, we're going to draw our belly button in and we're going to arch that back. So again, getting that startled cat arch. And then we're going to tuck our head down and think about tucking that tailbone behind you. So we're kind of tucking that tailbone, tucking that head. This would be that cat position. And then to get to the dog position, we're gonna drop that belly button down. So we're dropping that belly, rolling those hips. So we're getting that arch in our low back. And then we're gonna kind of bring our chest up and out a little bit, and then head comes up some. So think about like a happy dog that's happy to see somebody, very kind of upright posture. So this is the dog position. You might feel a little bit of stretch in your abdominal muscles when you do this. And then back to the cat position. So again, drawing that belly up, arch that back, tuck that head. And back to the dogs here. Dropping that belly, rolling those hips. Chest comes down and kind of up a little bit forward, head up some. And from that seated position, you're essentially trying to mimic these same movements. Just think about it in a vertical fashion instead of kind of this horizontal position. We're just doing it in the vertical position. So we're, again, kind of arching that back down for that position. Head comes down, kind of tuck our tailbone some. And then to get to that dog position, we arch our back the opposite way, kind of get into that extended position, and then bring our head back from that seated position. If you're laying down, that head comes up. And back to the cat. We'll just do one more rotation here for both. So again, draw that belly up, arch that back up, head comes down. And back to the dog, so roll those hips, drop that belly. Chest comes slightly up and forward, head up. Again, you might get that stretch in those abdominal muscles. All right, and then we're gonna finish off this with a child's pose stretch or a prayer stretch. This is a good stretch to kind of take some pressure off your low back. It's also a good upper back stretch. But for this one, if you're on the ground, you're just gonna sit back on your heels, and then you're gonna walk your hands out in front of you as far as you can reach. So that's gonna get that nice upper back stretch, but we're also kind of taking that pressure off our low back. So we're just reaching out as far as we can and just kind of settling into this position. And then if you're in that seated position, you're gonna kind of reach those arms up. You can either reach up or out in front of you, and then just kind of leaning forward a little bit. So again, continuing that reach, but then leaning forward so you get that a little bit of that stretch in your back, in particular, kind of taking that pressure off your low back a bit. Again, with our stretches, we want to hold for about 30 seconds or so. All right. So that concludes our core strength and low back pain prevention workout. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to check out our other videos. And until next time, keep moving.